Thank you, Mrs. Cristobal and speakers, for an enlightening discussion on how space technologies and applications can help us create more sustainable, prosperous, and connected regions. Building upon the notion of space as a multidisciplinary field and also as a driving force of innovation, I am now thrilled to present the last talk of today. In this talk, we will hear about how working and investing in space in the space sector can accelerate that scientific, technological, and social change, how Spain and Europe have contributed to the global space sector and economy, and how we can always do better, both at a regional and national level. And as someone who has always dreamt of going to space, it is an absolute privilege to welcome to the stage Mr. Pedro Duque, European astronaut and former Spanish Minister for Science, Innovation, and Universities. After earning a degree in aeronautical engineering, Mr. Duque worked for GMV and the European Space Agency's Space Operations Center in Germany, where he participated on numerous projects before being elected to join ESA's astronaut corps in 1992. Several years later, he flew as a mission specialist on the Space Shuttle Discovery mission when he spent 9 days in the International Space Station, and he then returned to the ISS in 2003 as the flight engineer of Expedition 8 on a Soyuz rocket, accumulating a total of almost 20 days in space. To complement his professional career in the space sector and his spaceflight experience, Mr. Duque taught at the School of Aeronautical Engineering in the Polytechnical University of Madrid, and he served as a Spanish minister from 2018 to 2021, therefore continuing to demonstrate his commitment to society and public work. So with this remarkable trajectory, I am humbled and honored to welcome Mr. Pedro Duque to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Such a privilege to have an introduction like this. I was given this, so I suppose I have to click. Yes. So the idea behind the talk, 1318, is to bring a lot of hope to everybody who's working in space technologies or studying space technologies. Yes, we should and probably we will get the attention of investment because we kickstart social improvement. So many things that have happened in society depend on what we do in space. By the way, beautiful background, you know, this is a real picture of real galaxies taken from a completely dark part of the universe, obviously from a telescope in space. So the thing is, we are always trying to cross barriers. So we go for different reasons to space or bring things to space, but it's always quite difficult and it always requires to cross the boundaries between what we know how to do and what we actually want to do. Oh, transferring to Microsoft made the letters to go away from the box, but it's still okay. We very much like Arthur Clarke. We were talking this morning about how science fiction helped bring the message to the public, and in this case, of course, Arthur Clarke is not only science fiction but science, and he was the first one to talk about telecommunication satellites fixed in orbit, and therefore we pay very much attention to what he says, and this is, of course, probably has been said by some Greek philosopher many years ago, but we only take attention to what Arthur Clarke says. So that's what we do. We try to embark in enterprises that seem impossible now, and this is exactly what drives the talent of the people. So at some point it was impossible, it seemed impossible to put objects around the Earth. It was dreamt for many years. But then to know in real time what happens on the other side of the Earth is a real societal change. We started in Tokyo in 1964. And the American authorities moved the satellite so that it could be transmitted, those Olympics. And that was the beginning of it. I was 1 year old. It seemed impossible to travel to the moon. And what we heard this morning, yeah, that was almost the last epic that happened in space, so we need more epics. It seemed impossible to live and work in space for months. I remember John Glenn always saying that when he flew in space, it was basically the doctors were not even sure if you would be able to swallow in space, if the bowels were going to work in space, if your eyeballs were going to kind of increase pressure and you will not be able to see. So we were trying to determine if we could actually go to space at all. And we know now that we can even live in space for months and months. We have developed sufficient technology for that. It seemed impossible to see the whole Earth at a single glance, and now we know exactly, all of us. We have talked for 2 days about it, how we have data from every part of the world at any moment. Many challenges, as I see from the previous conference, about how to connect the data taken from one satellite from the data taken from the other, the databases of the European Union, the other databases, how to get for specific uses, specific data. And sometimes that brings a commercial niche for other companies to create different satellite networks that weren't existing before. Well, I did that for 5 years. I was leading a company who bought a satellite that strived to provide more or less real-time information with, let's say, medium resolution, but real-time. So it now seems impossible to explore other planets, live in other planets, and most important, to return. We all want to return, at least from the first 20 missions or so, and eventually maybe we can be able to stay there, but it now seems impossible now. But we will do it. And we will do it because we collect the most advanced, the best talent from the universities, from the, as we also said before, also the technicians that work in technical training, from people from humanities too, in such a way that we manage to do things that seem impossible. I always use safety factor as the key issue. Why investing in space means create the highest possible technology and make the most refined discoveries in order to then spread the best science to everywhere in the industry. When you build a building like this, imagine somebody computed this building. I mean, it was done with probably methods in the, I don't know, I should ask them, but 17th century or something like that. Earlier than that? 14? Wow. So somebody computed this, and since they were not very good with computers in the 14th century, they probably thought that they needed like a certain size of beams, and they probably put 10 times, 20 times just in case, because of course the king was looking, and if it fell, then that was not good. And that's the typical, the safety factor that you need in architecture. Still, with today's computers, you still have very, very large safety factors in architecture compared to what we have for rockets. You cannot put a safety factor. You compute that you need a kilo of aluminum in a certain place in a rocket, and you don't put 4 kilos because it will not fly. Maximum you put 1.05 kilos, 1.1 maybe. So we have to compute always much more accurately than everyone else. And this is the reason why when the talents of course, like space, and things that we do for space normally are much more, let's say, refined, advanced. Basically, what we do is we do for space what you would always want to do for other things, but nobody let you because that was too expensive. That this is the size of the computer just a couple of years before the Apollo missions, and that's the size of the computers after the Apollo missions. This is the flight computer of I think it is the flight computer of the Saturn V rocket that did the same sort of, it had the same capacity of this other one. I'm sure IBM or whoever built this computer, or Honeywell, I don't know which computer it is because there were very few manufacturers at that time. I'm sure there were young, brilliant engineers at IBM that said, we should do the computers much, much smaller because we can. And then I suppose somebody said at IBM, why do you want to do that? Because we still sell them. Who wants a small computer? And that went in a cycle probably for decades until somebody said, we need computation in a rocket. And that changed everything. Suddenly, public money came up. They defined R&D projects. They made innovative public procurement, which is where this comes from. And computers started becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. So probably everyone would have dreamed of having smaller computers, but only the people who work for Apollo had the money to do it, and therefore everybody then benefited from it. The same with digital cameras. As soon as the CCD was invented, it was immediately used in the Hubble Space Telescope, and of course in the sister satellites of Hubble, which are spy satellites that are still flying around, that they're exactly the same, but look down. But then JPL needed smaller, Goldin said, faster, better, cheaper. So we cannot bring so many tons to Jupiter and take pictures. So people like Fossum at JPL, who led the development of optical sensors, was given the task. We need much smaller sensors with much smaller power consumption, and this has to be done by this date. And they developed the first imaging CMOS sensor. Well, okay, transfer to industry didn't work very well. He went to, I forgot the number of people he went to in order for them to adopt the technology. I think Kodak, all these companies in the United States, and none of them really adopted. So he created his own company. And now this is a very big, they have changed the logo, by the way, a couple of years ago, but I was too lazy to change the web page yesterday. But all the cameras that we have in all our mobile phones today were created in order to go to space, because everybody in Kodak, in all these other things, in all these other places, thought CCD is good enough. But for JPL, for NASA, CCD was not good enough. And we created CMOS, and that opened a gigantic market of 10 billion cameras in CMOS. And then not only the devices themselves then open new markets, but the methods themselves. The architect of the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao had an idea, but couldn't make it happen until he saw a marvelous piece of software by the Dassault aviation company called CATIA that allows you to make metal structures of any shape and compute all the different attachment points with the minimum weight and in metal so that they can be manufactured straight away. And only because of that, then he was able to create this enormously powerful piece of art, which is the Guggenheim Museum architecture. He didn't think about all the very expensive cleaning of the titanium afterwards, but this is another story. And space multiplies people, we have said that several times already. This is a graph that was shown to me at some point. I don't think there's a laser here. There's a future laser, maybe. This is a graph that was shown to me many, many years ago, and I still carry it around because it is the only time maybe that it was measured. So the dark blue, well, whatever, green, dark green here is the NASA budget. I use it also to demonstrate that it was clearly a money problem why there were no more lunar missions. They cut the budget to half, even before the last lunar mission. So, but I think it is clearly seeing that the PhDs in math, engineering, and physical sciences were influenced very strongly by this vision that was projected by Kennedy, that this country, the United States in that case, must learn to sail in the new seas of space and must do something in a way second to none, or something like that. Beautiful phrases, meaning the prospect of you becoming part of space endeavors is a big, big incentive for people to study hard, to know, to do things, to invent. And they know that if you are going to go to space, you are going to be allowed to invent, because there will be money for that, because that's the only way that we can get to space. And the other aspect of space is that, when we open up new possibilities that going to space provides us, then society changes, markets open up, multiple orders of magnitude of increase in certain markets occur. For example, telecommunications, that's obvious, like we said before. Direct broadcasting to any region. You can go to the middle of the desert and still have internet if you buy the proper equipment, just a battery and a little box. But this has changed society. I mean, economy certainly, because moving data from one place to the other has improved very much the possibilities of having industries in remote places. But also information is a way to empower the people. Now we know what's happening in real time, what is happening in Gaza, in Ukraine, or in, I don't know, other places where there's a famine, or there are other things happening, and therefore society has changed. Now we care. We should care more, but now satellites have provided us the ability to know what happens, and therefore has allowed the society to care about all the world. Earth observation, we have talked maybe too much about that already, but one thing that we need to stress maybe is that Earth observation is an impartial observer if it is done from space, because it observes every piece of land with the same sensor. You cannot be like a dictator somewhere and said, I have measured that we do not contribute to climate change, and hereby I sign this paper. No, because there's somebody looking. And this is very, very important, I think, in society. So society has a means to bring up who's doing it right, who's doing it wrong, where there's deforestation, we know, because there's satellites. And of course, the precision land use, we have talked sufficiently about it. You can do better with cultivation. You can improve insurances. We maybe have talked about it. I remember when I was in the Deimos company that we were providing full coverage of the United States every 15 days. And this was essential for the insurance, basically the whole market of commodities in the United States. I mean, the agricultural things. And space revolution, navigation system, we have talked about sufficiently. What's next is probably what this Congress is about. For example, this is a real program by the real Air Force of the real United States, transporting things through space. Now it's possible. Will that change society? I don't know. Maybe you get things immediately. Of course, it will change the military. But will it change other things in the society? We don't yet know. Quantum key distribution, we know about it already. Will that change society? Will it eliminate a lot of the hassle that we have with security? I don't know, maybe. Or we bring more, I don't know. Radical reduction in cost of all the space infrastructure that we now need due to refueling. Maybe that's the next thing. And I forgot one. And there were people from Microsoft and Google here, and maybe Amazon will also want to do that. Will we have all our data servers in space? It's easier to be environmentally safe. I leave it here. I have like the minister presentation about how public money should foster industry, but I think we have heard sufficiently about that, and I am able to open for 5 minutes or 10 of questions if you want. Thank you very much. So I think this is the only time that you have done in this conference. Maybe people didn't have anything thought. So we may... there's one.
Yes, hello.
Always the brave one.
My name is David, and I was wondering, in your experience, what is more difficult? To find a technical solution to a problem, or to find the money to solve that problem?
Well, these are two different... it's not a one-dimension thing, so it's 2 dimensions, and both are difficult. Of course, that was part of the rest of the presentation, what the state should do for that. You have to have the several types of people in order to build a successful company, and of course you have to have the scientists, technologists who who create a solution that doesn't exist in the market. You have to have the people who find the money in order to be able to provide for the living of the first ones, so that it can go for the number of years that the solution needs to be developed, really. And of course you need the commercial people to sell it. But I think, for example, one of the things that the government should do is foster in general R&D, so that there's a background from where ideas can happen. And then several things that we put together are also important. Seed capital. We put together a couple of funds with seed capital. That is very important. You know, because in Europe, and maybe I'm I'm not being very ordered here in my expression of ideas, but in Europe it is more difficult, the second part that you said. So to find the capital to fund a certain group of brilliant people for sufficient time so that they reach to a sellable product, this is much more difficult because talent is very widespread, but capital is not accustomed to go to venture. And this is something that we have to solve in two ways. One, the public sector should provide fairly to everybody with sufficiently good evaluations capital that is a seed, and we have done that when I was minister. I have started to work this year in January, I think it is. And the other side is we have to be vocal in promoting that the people who have money also spend a little bit on our young entrepreneurs so that they can become big and they can provide the jobs of the future.
I have a question here. Hello. How do you see Europe in front of China and US in this race to space?
Europe, compared to China and the US in the race to space? Well, for once, in general, in R&D, we are still behind. And that was part of my minister presentation. The last slide says, fostering innovation in companies and enterprise is the central role of a modern state. So we don't have sufficient, everybody says that this is true, but there's 10 times more money in the United States. So how does it work? We need to do more in that sense in the area of promoting the general development of industries, certainly. But since we have more talent, then we can still compensate. So it is not going well, and also we have not used public money in the efficient way that it has been used in the United States, which is the modification of the NASA Space Act in 2005, I think it is, that allowed the agency to give contracts that were not financing 100% of the R&D, and were financing the companies only in case of success by using them as services purchased. And this is something that we have not yet done in ESA. We are more than 15 years late, but it seems to have, we seem to have an opening now with some exploration programs that have been opened, but I still need to see that happen. Since I'm not leading that now, I cannot guarantee. We will see.
Pedro, a question here. I'm appealing to your experience international, but also to your experience as a minister. Mm-hmm. It is fascinating to witness what a region like Catalonia is doing with a NewSpace strategy here in Catalonia.
Yes.
And
you need to put this closer to you.
Mobilizing an ecosystem with the strategy that they put in place. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is fascinating to see. So, from your experience in the administration, but also internationally, how could we help them to amplify what is done here into Spain and into Europe and into the world?
Well, the most important thing is that fostering this innovation is kind of linked to the fact that there is no local markets in space. So anybody who goes with an idea to be fulfilled by going to space has a global market. From the jet set from the set-go. There's no local markets. I've seen so many times, I haven't said much, like a very small region buying for PR purposes a satellite, and an Earth observation satellite, for example, and they say that it's going to provide services. One satellite for a small region, that simply doesn't work. One satellite has to provide services to the whole world, otherwise it will never. So and therefore the money is best spent if it is spent more globally. So we should have much more European programs, then one order of magnitude less in each country, and then one order of magnitude less in each, let's say, region, and start as soon as we can pushing people from one level to the next. This is what I did as minister, talking to all the regional authorities. Please do not try to duplicate. And I didn't try to duplicate the European Space Agency or the space investments of the European Union. Do not try to duplicate the next level. Try to do things different that pushes people into the next level. We did that in science, and we agreed with several regions. So they provided incentive money for scientific groups in order to get better, so that they could just hold on the next rung of the ladder, which was the national programs for science, for incentivization of brilliant groups. That is existing and has sufficient money. And then we would promote them in order to go to the next rung, which will be the European Research Council. And this is the same, that there needs to be a proper collaboration between the different levels, and if you start duplicating, this is very, very inefficient. This is something I think is so. In order to make the money that is regionally spent efficient and valuable, it has to be with the focus of sending people and companies to the next levels.
Hi, Pedro. Oh, yeah, I was there yesterday. It's really difficult to see who is talking. It's here in the background.
Okay.
So,
yes.
no problem. So yesterday we talked quite a lot about talent, retention of talent, creation of new talent, and you are an inspiration for my generation. So how do you think that we can reach the new generation, the young ones, to get as excited as I was when you had your first flight? So what do you think? They think in a different way than how I was thinking. What is your advice?
Well, this is very much linked to our first keynote speech today from Renko. That is, the younger the people, the more inspirational the things that happen should be. So having somebody flying in space that you believe it could be you is really, really important. It is much more difficult if you're trying to motivate the young generation to go into certain disciplines by saying you may eventually go in a job that gives you sufficient money to live. That doesn't work. But if you go into this, then you may either be the person going to space or help somebody like you to go to space. That's essential. So we should, at the different government levels and mostly the highest possible, we should be also thinking about how to provide the image of somebody like you is doing something that you consider really cool. So study and you will be like that. This basically is the thing. And we have to, not only with space, but fostering the careers of women into certain areas like engineering or even worse, informatics or something, this requires also the same kind of action. So bringing up who is a woman that was successful in engineering, making that very known so that other people also start feeling all of these spaces that we think are a potential that we are losing. So things like that have to be done.
Thank you, Pedro, for your inspiring presentation. During this Congress, we have heard about the challenge of commercialization and the approach to the end users. How do you think administrations can help, or community or ecosystem can help in creating all those markets?
Well, of course, depends very much on what areas we are talking about. We have this kind of line of trying to get people to provide products that will be successful in commerce and in the market. For example, one of the last stages that we have also started when I was in the government is a strong innovative public procurement program. So what this does is when a company has the possibility of creating a prototype that they think and they can show may have a commercial value in the future, then they can go to anybody in the administration, regional, local, national, whatever, and partner with that administration. And then this money that we have for innovative public procurement will buy the first prototype. So we buy the first prototype. This is the innovative public procurement, and then we give it for free to this public administration who said they would need it if it worked. And this is like the last rung of the ladder that I think is, and of course I have taken it from the European Space Agency. What do? They do innovative public procurement. There was stuff for scientists that are always first prototypes with the hope that all of these phenomena will happen. That is, they will invent things that will eventually go to market.
You have talked before about new generations and
about what?
You were talking before about new generations.
New generations.
Yeah, and it's obvious that you have achieved a lot of important things in the space field. So if you could talk and you could give an advice to Pedro Duque, 20 years old, which advice would you give him?
The main thing is that well, basically the advice I got when I first said as a child that I wanted to be an astronaut is, where are you going? There's no way. Spain doesn't have any technology, there are no companies, the government doesn't participate in any European programs, so either, and even as a European it's difficult, so you should either go and live and become American or become Russian, but forget about it. So this is the change. So I think we now can say to the younger generation, today you can achieve any goals as a European. Basically that's the thing. We are really hoping that we are doing enough, even though it is less than United States and China still in monetary terms. But if you have goals for yourself that are technological, that are exploring, that are doing things that nobody has ever done, then I think as European you can do it. And by the time you get there, I hope we have helped a little bit the access to capital, which is really, really hard right now. And And I'm sad that this is the end of the time that we have. So thank you very much and good luck.